What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Meko, joined by my guy Morgan. Morgan, we're here for part 2 of our film study when looking at the Los Angeles Rams. The first part, we looked specifically at the Rams offense and kind of talked about some of the things the Lions would have to contend with in the likes of Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, that offensive line, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams. Like the list kind of goes on and on when you start kind of rattling stuff off like, oh, this isn't just like your run-of-the-mill offense. I think the same thing can be done about this defense, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have Aaron Donald, who, for my money, is you could argue Reggie White, but maybe the greatest interior defensive lineman to ever live. So that helps.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, you have some young talent that's been playing well just over the course of the year and has gotten better as the years worn on. Kobie Turner, Byron Young. You have Ernest Jones at off-ball linebacker playing well. You mentioned how much you like their safeties and John Johnson and Jordan Fuller. So yeah, they got some players, and they've definitely gotten better as the years gone on. I know they're 22nd overall in DVOA. 21 in the pass and 20 against the run. But then if you adjust it since week 11, they're 17th against the pass and 18th against the run. So it's gotten better. It's jumped up over the last, the back half of the season, if you will. So yeah, it's going to be another matchup. But again, I know we talked about it before. This is one where if they execute, the Lions offense can have their way with this defense for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to execution, there's one guy that you have to make sure you're executing against. And it's like you said, Morgan, probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest defensive tackle to ever play the game in Aaron Donald. Having so many years in the league, we thought he was going to retire a couple years ago. And he's still playing at a high level, maybe not nearly at the same level he was a couple years ago when he was getting double-digit sacks and raking in Defensive Player of the Year awards. But one thing you can still count on Aaron Donald for is stuff like this, where he just continues to show off that athleticism to get into the backfield.
Yeah, and this is just a hell of a play. The guard, you can tell the guard for New Orleans he knows he's going up against Aaron Donald. And this is just a bad technique. Like he lunges at him, doesn't get anything on him, and it's just a Olay and a TFL. So, yeah, this can't happen. I will say I'm glad that the Lions' interior offensive line is one of the better in football.
Yeah.
Because they're going to need it. Like we're going to need an all-pro performance out of Frank Ragnow, who should be making another all-pro this year. Going to need good days out of Jonah Jackson and Graham Glasgow because – like you said, he's not Aaron Donald of 2020 or 2021, but because at the end of the day, I think people don't understand that shelf lives for interior defensive linemen are a little bit shorter than on the edge, just because you're doing a lot of dirty work as a one tech or a nose or a three tech. You're banging around in there a lot more than some of these edge players are. So the fact that AD has been doing this so long at the size he is, because he's only 6'1", I say only 6'1", he's one of the strongest people on the planet, but 6'1", 290 pounds, and still making plays like this, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, the thing that I find so funny about this play, like you said, 74 lunges at him, and like it almost feels like everything stops after that. And you and I are big anime fans. It's almost like those moments in anime where like stuff stops and slows down and they give like a monologue of the main character and they're just explaining how everything is not going the way they thought it would. That's what I feel like it's like when Aaron Donald beats you that quickly, where you just start second guessing every decision you've ever made in life because you know the person behind you, whether it's the quarterback or the running back, is about to get lit up.
That's a great point. Like it's like you run into just someone whose weight like OP just overpowered as hell, and 74. I'm sure at the point when he gets swam and he's staring down at the turf, I'm sure he's like, "Damn, I just got."
I would love to talk to an offensive lineman, Morgan, and try to figure out which is worse. Getting swam and like you're looking at turf, knowing that you're supposed to be like chest to chest with a defensive lineman, or getting trucked over where you're looking at the sky and you're just like, how did I get here? I feel like both have to be bad, but I would love to know which one is worse.
I'd almost just rather get swam. Well, I don't know. It goes back and forth because if you get trucked, like if someone bulls you and runs you over, the only hope you have is that hopefully they trip over you.
Right.
Which you're like, hey, that's not so terrible. But then a lot of time, I feel like that's when offensive linemen always get called for tripping because they're on their backs and they're just like doing stuff like this, trying to get somebody down. So I'd almost just rather get swam. We'd have to ask 74 because like I would love to ask him like, hey, what happened on this rep? He'd be like, just try.
I'm gonna see if Jeremy could pull some strings and see if we can get a conversation with Graham or Jonah, because I would love to know like which is worse, because I feel like getting swam has to like feel just as bad because he's behind. Like he's in the backfield. There's a collision happening. Yeah.
Yep.
If like you said, if you get trucked over, you're like, oh, there's a good chance he trips over me. He may not even get there.
Maybe he'll step on my face and trip. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
But listen, that's some of the things that you have to worry about with Aaron Donald. He's going to win that quickly in the middle, which is where 99% of quarterbacks don't want to see pressure coming from, is up the middle. And what makes it even worse, though, Morgan, is that the Rams have Aaron Donald. They also have Kobie Turner, who is having a really good year. He actually led the Rams in sacks with 9, who's primarily playing nose tackle.
Yeah, and Turner, out of Wake Forest, he was a 3rd-round pick this past draft cycle, so definitely outplaying his draft position, if you will. So, yeah, I think he has a legit discussion at least for defensive rookie of the year. But yeah, they move him around on the interior a bit. Here you can see they have all 3 defensive linemen stacked to the one side of the center, while they have Aaron Donald all the way out at the wide 9 going against that right tackle. And that's just a way for them to manufacture a one-on-one for AD, but it doesn't end up mattering because Turner gets a good whip here, man. That's a mean, like almost like a swat he gives with that left hand. Oh, this is a good view of it here. This is nice. So watch Turner's left hand. What? Gets rid of him. That's a lot of power. And yeah, good job of bringing down the quarterback. So he's another one you're going to have to keep an eye on. And again, it's going to call for the Lions' interior offensive line to all pull into their Frank Ragnow bag. Be sound, get your punch right, because both Donald and Turner, if you are poor with your technique, they're going to make you pay for it.
Morgan, I have 2 quick points on this clip, and we can actually move on to the next one.
Yeah.
The first one being like what you're saying with Kobie Turner and that quickness, and just again, before the center can even really get hands on him, like that's the type of stuff that you see in the NFL draft combine when they're slapping the bag, trying to get around. Like it's always cool to me when you can see things that happen in the combine translate to the pro game. The second thing that I find once again really funny about this play is the other thing that you mentioned. They put everybody else on one side, put Aaron Donald by himself, and the Cardinals still dedicated 3 bodies to him.
Yep. Yep.
That's when you know you're a problem in the league. When you can be by your lonesome and they're just like, no. 3 people.
Yep. And they kept it, like you said, they kept that running back in there to chip him too. Yeah, in my opinion, this almost should have been slid by that right guard for Arizona. Like that almost needed to be checked to the left a little bit, just so you have a little bit more help dealing with this overloaded rush that the Rams throw at you on the other side. But yeah, I hope this is where the Lions offensive line and their experience together with the starting 5 pays dividends, because with experience and, comes like the ability to get into those pre-snap checks, whether it's Goff or it's Frank.
Yeah.
Checking into a protection that makes a little bit more sense, because like Aaron Donald's great, but could you have gotten away with not having 3 people on him right there? Probably, maybe allocate one more body over there, but it's just going to be right down to down basis.
Well, especially when looking at, the Rams alignment, they're not typically going with 4 down linemen. So it's like you're typically having a numbers advantage anyway. So there should be some level of, like, hey, we should be able to slide protection one way or the other, or at least, check on me before you decide to just abandon me to a one-on-one. But I get how that's a tough decision when you have a guy like Aaron Donald that again, we the very first play we saw could win very quickly. But
Yeah,
Kobie Turner isn't the only young guy that the Lions have to worry about, right?
no, and you have Byron Young also, who's playing well off the edge, another young talented player. And again, for guys like Kobie Turner and Byron Young, it's nice to be able to learn from a walking gold jacket like you have in Aaron Donald, right? There's no one better to learn from probably in the league right now, in terms of how to play defensive line and how to be a bad dude, than Aaron Donald. But this is a good play, active hands, man. Like you can see that Young's coming with that double chop
Yeah,
right out of his first move. And does a good job of keeping his eyes on Lamar Jackson. You can see him like
yeah.
trying to peek around the tackle, like where'd you go? Where'd you go? So yeah, this is just a good play, and in my opinion, the hardest quarterback to sack in the NFL. So good on them here. This is a nice play all around.
Yeah, I think we need to add another situation to the offensive line question, Morgan. Getting turned completely around. Because that's
Please.
exactly what happens to 78 here. And I know, like, this absolutely should not happen.
No, and like they're taught, like if they do get turned around, to get that head around quick and try to find work. So I think that's Morgan Moses, if I'm not mistaken, who's played really well this year. But
Yeah.
yeah, typically if you do get turned around like that, it's usually a bad day for the offensive lineman because you're in a position you don't want to be in.
No, not at all. And again, Byron Young, like you said, learning and working next to an Aaron Donald also has a Kobie Turner on the defensive line. That's 3 guys, Morgan, that all have at least 8 sacks or more. Like, that's a lot of like pressure and a lot of know-how of getting to the quarterback on that defensive line.
Yeah, and like we talked about earlier, the defense too has definitely been improving as the season's gone on. There's a reason Raheem Morris has gotten a couple requests for head coaching jobs, if I'm not mistaken, right? So
Yeah.
that's the Rams defensive coordinator. I really like Raheem Morris. I hope he gets another shot. But yeah, he's a good coach. He's a good coordinator. He uses a lot of different schemes. He's not really married to one approach, which I like out of coaches. Like switch it up. So he's going to use linebackers. He's going to use defensive backs to try to generate pressure on Goff. But a lot of the time, the Rams are going to rely on their guys like Donald, Turner, and Byron Young just to win their one-on-ones because, like we talked about earlier in the other video as well, that's the quickest way to help your back end, right? To help your secondary is if you can create pressure with just 4 or 5, because then you can allocate more bodies to stopping the Lions' vaunted passing game. So, yeah, it's going to be one of those, the offensive line is going to have to play a good game in order to try to limit the chaos that the Rams can cause in the backfield.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only does the offensive line have to worry about a strong defensive line, these Lions skill players are gonna have to worry about some really physical and competitive secondary players as well. Starting first with Akilo Witherspoon, who is again easily one of their better corners. He's tied on the team with 2 interceptions on the year. Uh, the Rams don't play a lot of press coverage, Morgan, but when they do, Witherspoon shows that he's more than up to the task and being able to stick with wide receivers.
Yeah, and Witherspoon's one of those rare guys that can make 44 look pretty fast, like Marlon Humphrey. In my opinion,
Yeah.
44 that's a pretty ugly number for cornerbacks as far as aesthetics go. But yeah, this is just a good rep. Does a good job. I think he wants the Arizona receiver to take an outside release, gets that, reroutes him a little bit, gets that one stab. And yeah, he's in phase the whole time. And this is what I'm talking about, what we were talking about when we want the defense to make life difficult for Stafford, because Stafford, like Kyler Murray, will try these throws. And
Mm-hmm.
this, honestly, that's not a bad ball by Kyler Murray, to be honest. That's kind of on the money. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, if you're in phase and you're able to at least get a hand in or around the football, you can make some good things happen. And yeah,
And the best thing about this rep is that, again, like you're saying, not just being in phase, but again, being competitive enough. So you're not just running side by side where he's running freely. Like, you both have equal, rights to the space that you're trying to occupy. So you're not grabbing, you're not tugging, nothing that should generate a flag. I say should because we all know defensive pass interference is whatever it wants to be on that given Sunday. But being competitive enough to where, like you're saying, a quarterback has to make a pinpoint perfect pass. And if you're at least in phase, you at least have an opportunity to make a play on the ball. It's now equal opportunity for both you and the receiver.
Yep. And to your point, like that's what Witherspoon does here. And he's competitive. That's something that jumped out into me when I was watching the tape too. Like you said, he's going to compete. I wouldn't classify him as like a lockdown corner or anything like that at this stage of his career.
Yeah.
But he's competitive, and yeah, he's gonna at least make it tough. Their secondary has been pretty sound. I don't think it's a well coached unit. They don't really have the talent that some of these other defenses have in the NFC or in the AFC at the top end of the playoff picture, but the fact that they're so sound, they can definitely play well enough to win games when the Rams offense is humming.
Yeah, they're honestly in a similar boat as the Lions in the sense that like there's not a big name guy in the secondary, but it's enough guys that are basically trying to be sound in technique, trying to work within the concept of the defense that they're running, and when everyone is doing their job perfectly, they're able to get plays like we just saw, or plays like we're about to look at here with John Johnson III. Dude can deliver a hit if given the opportunity.
Yeah, and I like Johnson's game coming out of Boston College. He, definitely more of their box safety, if you will. And Fuller's a little bit better at, being that deep, that middle third safety and patrolling. But yeah, this is a big hit. And I put a little bit of this on Kyler Murray kind of throwing, who is that? Rondale Moore?
Rondale Moore, yeah.
Yeah, into trouble. He's a little guy too. That's tough. But yeah, John Johnson can deliver a boom. He's definitely a bigger, more imposing safety. And you can see he kind of rolls down here and immediately sees where Murray's going with the ball.
Yeah, and this is something we're going to talk about a little bit later in the video, at least a little more in depth. Like, this is the type of coverage that the Rams like to play, right, Morgan? Like, they like to kind of keep guys back and they like to make the plays. Even if that means giving up a reception, like, they're all going to rally to the football, though.
Yeah, again, it goes back to our well-coached defense point. Like, Raheem Morris has these guys playing well. They're playing together. And, I like your point, too. I know we made it before we got on, but they kind of are in a similar spot to the Lions currently, where their personnel is kind of dictating, like, what they can and can't use on game day, right? Like,
yeah.
You don't have a Jalen Ramsey or a Sauce Gardner at corner, so you kind of have to plan accordingly, right? Like it's just one of those things. So I agree with you there that the Rams defense is kind of in the same boat as the Lions. I would give the Lions personnel an edge, besides Aaron Donald, of course. Just because I do like Cam Sutton. I know Cam's had a rough couple of weeks going against CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson twice, but again, that would be anybody, guys. They are who they are for a reason.
Facts.
If you go look at CeeDee Lamb's, before the Lions played the Cowboys, I was looking at CeeDee Lamb's box score. You could probably go back and watch our video. And man, it's every game. It's 15 targets, 9 catches, and 160 yards.
Yeah, dude. Like you don't get to over 1,700 yards taking weeks off, right? Like
no.
you gave everybody work throughout the course of the season.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's a good point. And yeah, the Rams don't necessarily have, they no longer have Jalen Ramsey to kind of count on in that lockdown safety role. They do have a budding safety though that I really, really like. And honestly, after watching some tape on him, I'm probably going to keep an eye on him a little bit more going forward, because Jordan Fuller plays safety the way I like safeties to play. And we've kind of talked about this when we've talked about Ifeatu Melifonwu the last couple weeks. But Jordan Fuller shows the same level of range, recognition, and just understanding of what his responsibilities are, and at least doing his job right.
For sure. And I've liked Fuller too. I liked him when he was at Ohio State, when he came out in 2020. So he's been in the league a couple years now. But yeah, you can see him. He's communicating on the back end here right up until the ball is snapped. He's moving the other safety. He's moving John Johnson. And then this is just a really nice break on the ball. Like, you can see from the get-go,
Mm-hmm.
Fuller's aware of his responsibility. Just that's an excellent break on the ball, man. I can't stress that enough. When I watched this, I watched it a couple times through. I was like, whew, this is nice.
Yeah, and I want to make a call back to, again, if you haven't watched our other video where we broke down the offense, we kind of talked about this type of concept, right, Morgan, with offenses where you have a kind of like a bit of a bunch formation, and the secondary has to determine who's responsible for who. With the Rams here, like you said, Fuller's in the middle of trying to communicate, like, hey, I'm taking this person, you're taking this person. And if you look, like, right before the ball snapped, he doesn't know if people, like, heard him because no one responded the way he thought. And what does he do? He doesn't panic. He just does what he thinks he's supposed to. He takes the person. I know who I'm supposed to have, so I'm taking that person. And it allows for him to make a perfect break on the ball here.
Yeah, and it's good recognition, right? Because as Fuller here, Witherspoon has the receiver running in front of your face.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you make a snap decision, you're going to go ahead and, get on top of this outbreaking route as soon as possible, and you're able to get a hand on the ball. And I really liked your comp to Iffy because, Fuller he's 6'2", 200 pounds, so a little bit smaller than Iffy, but can make some of these really rangy plays on the back end, like you were talking about, because you got to have closing speed and you got to have ball skills to be able to make this kind of a snap play, excuse me.
No, absolutely. And again, that's the type of stuff that can make life difficult, for Jared Goff, because the Lions like to run these types of concepts. They like to run, an Amon-Ra St. Brown to the boundary or a Sam Laporta to the boundary. Who knows if he'll be able to play this week, but those types of routes. And if you have a safety, though, that can, again, play with depth, but still be able to make a break on the ball on these types of throws, this gets really dicey because, Morgan, Jared Goff doesn't always hit these throws as perfectly as he should.
Yeah, that's a good point, Meko. Like, when you're playing good safeties or just good DBs in general, you really need to be on schedule as a passer, because like throwing some of those outbreaking routes near the boundary, if you throw those late, as you know, that's when you can get those interceptions, right? Because you have that extra Mississippi to get on the ball and to make your break. And the only way that can really be defeated from a quarterback standpoint is either throwing with a shit ton of anticipation, like you see in the Dolphins offense with Tua, or you have a Mahomes, Herbert, or Stafford caliber arm where you can be a little late, but that thing's going to have a vapor trail coming off of it, and it doesn't matter, right?
Right. Like, those types of passes are the difference between, like, they might get a pick, but that pick is going to carry them out of bounds versus a pick that can get 2 feet down and possibly turn that into a pick six.
Right, exactly. That's where my brain goes. So I will say Goff's been better about that this season, about, being on time and on target with some of those those longer developing routes. I feel like off the top of my head, a lot of his picks have been tipped passes and just crap in the middle, or, just some stupid decisions nonetheless, but not really like lack of arm talent, if you will, because Goff still has a lot of really, has good arm talent. Yes, he can't throw the ball as hard as some other guys, but he can still make all the throws. But I say all that to say this Rams defense isn't like elite. Like, they're not on par with like the Baltimore and the San Franciscos of the league, but you give them opportunities and they can make plays. So going back to our first video, take care of the football, win the turnover battle, and I think you'll be well on your way to hopefully playing in the divisional round.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more play that I have for Jordan Fuller to kind of like piggyback off what you're saying, in that, again, maybe not the most talented roster defensively, but you give them opportunities to make plays here, which is what kind of Kyler Murray does here, where he has a really bad pass, like kind of lets this ball hang up there a little too long. And Jordan Fuller has the athleticism, he has the range to be able to, again, get another pass breakup on a really, again, on a deep route that could have been a backbreaker for them.
Yeah, and honestly, I fault Murray because this is a bad ball. Like, if you throw this with a little more anticipation and throw it towards the boundary down at the bottom of the screen, then maybe you give your receiver a chance to run under it. But like you said, Mika, he kind of holds it up there. And good job by Johnson not drawing a penalty flag because he didn't go over the back. Like he's athletic enough to jump up and
Mhm.
clear you, which is what he does here. And reaches over and gets his hand in there and is able to dislodge it. So again, range, right? Because you see where he's at when this ball is thrown,
Yeah.
and is able to make the play. And I didn't realize he was one of their captains. I just saw that C on his shirt, so that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it goes to show you that again, he's one of the guys that they trust, again, probably making a
Mhm.
lot of calls, making a lot of decisions on the back end. And like you said, I love a lot of things about that play. The ability to close, the ability to not draw a penalty and not get, you know, overly excited because you think you have a pick, and also not to get greedy in the situation. I think there's sometimes you see DBs try to get greedy in a situation and they try to either undercut something or just get out of phase. Jordan Fuller is a guy who will trust his technique and oftentimes be in a position to make a play.
Yep. Like you said, Raheem Morris, trust him for a reason, right? Because that's a really good point. I did see him making a ton of calls and shuffling traffic on the back end for the Rams. So it makes sense that he would be one of their more trusted defenders. So yeah, again, it's almost going to be a chess match pre-snap because the Lions offense can, just like the Rams offense has, the Lions offense has quite a bit of eye candy. A lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of stretching the field vertically and horizontally, almost more horizontally, which is kind of what the Rams do. They're going to try to stretch you out, like we talked about with those drags and things like that, where it's they're running sideline to sideline. So yeah, it's one of those instances where Goff is going to have to just keep, the Lions need to keep the pocket clean for Goff. And if things
Mm-hmm.
can stay relatively on schedule and keep, I think you're going to be in okay shape just because, they have players back there, but it's, there's no Ed Reed running around. Uh, the only Ed Reed caliber player they have is playing on the defensive line. And hopefully you can just hope to slow him down, right?
Worst case scenario, 3 people.
Yeah, that's true. Frank, yeah, that's
you,
true.
you just tell the guys like, hey, we're gonna be doubling 99. If 99 is on the edge, double, triple,
Chip,
whatever you got to do.
chip.
Do not let him get to Jared. Um, Morgan, I had some other plays, but like for the sake of this video, I don't want to go. I don't want to have to go back and forth between them. So one thing I did want to talk about though, specifically with this Rams defense, is the type of coverage that they play. So we talked about it a little bit earlier. They do play a lot of off coverage. Like
Yep.
it's very heavy in that. And if you guys have been frustrated with the Lions defense the last couple weeks, at least you'll be able to take advantage of somebody else doing some of the same things. And I think there's pros and cons to playing that style of defense, right? The cons are what we've seen happen to the Lions a lot of times. You're giving up a lot of cushion. You're giving up a lot of space. And so you're more than likely giving up receptions underneath. And if you don't have sound tackling, those can turn into big plays. The pros of it, though, is that it keeps everything in front of you. You're not more than likely getting beat by anything underneath. And if your safeties are staying deep, you're able to kind of everybody's able to keep eyes on everything developing in front of them. This is something, though, Morgan, I don't know if you're in agreement, but I think the Lions will really be able to take advantage of this, if for no other reason than the fact that they probably see it consistently enough in practice.
That's a good point. Yeah, I'm with you there. I do think because a lot of the stuff I watch, they're giving a good amount of cushion on the outside. It does seem like Raheem Morris is in the business of like, okay, let's not, similar to what we were talking about, like let's not give anything cheap up, right? Like let's make
Yeah.
them earn stuff. So yeah, it's going to be the Lions needing to execute, for an extended period of time against this defense because I do think they're going to make you earn it. But on the other hand, if the opportunity is there to get a chunk play, to get JMO on a go, or to get Ja, on a reverse or something along those lines, that would be nice. Just because if you could start getting some chinks in that armor, right? Like start chipping away at Raheem Morris's ability to try and keep everything in front of him, then I do think that's when the Rams could struggle a little bit. Like I watched the whole game just a couple weeks ago when they eked out a win against the Giants, 26-25.
Yeah.
And as we know, the Giants' offense has not been good this year. Let's just call a spade a spade. It's been ass. Um,
Yep.
but they were moving the ball a little. They were moving the ball a little bit against the Rams, so it can be done. And very similar, they were just trying to. They were letting the Giants take what they, you take little chips here and there, but not really anything big. So yeah, that's a really good point, and I do think Morris is gonna, because I'm sure Morris is watching this tape like, damn, how am I going to slow down this offense, because the Lions have been putting big numbers up on everybody all season practically. So
Yeah.
do you think he'll adopt that mantra, like let's make them earn it, like 10 play drives every time?
I think more than anything, Raheem Morris is going to have to be versatile in his coverage. The same stuff that we've been like begging Aaron Glenn to do, like, hey, mix up your coverages a little bit more. Don't let it be consistently off coverage, because if that becomes the case, like you're saying, the Lions will take the stuff underneath. They'll allow Amon-Ra St. Brown to run curl routes, or Josh Reynolds to run these slants, or JMO to run a drag route. They'll take those things. And then the minute your safeties and your linebackers and your corners start to kind of show some signs of like, okay, they're just expecting everything underneath, that's when they're going to hit you over the top. So if I'm Raheem Mostert, I'm mixing everything up.
Yeah, and I'm sure he will. It's the playoffs. It's going to be like a burn the boat scenario. I will say, I almost want the Rams to send extra rushers
Oh,
at
yeah.
Goff, just because I do have faith in the offensive line, at least if they're playing well and everyone's healthy, knock on wood,
Mm-hmm.
that they'll be able to pick things up. And I do think that opens the door to some big plays, right? Like, because that's when you get gashed. You send extra rushers, they don't get home, and now you've got you don't have numbers on the back end, and things can go wrong, right?
Well, like you said, the Lions have an all-pro caliber center in Frank Ragnow. They have an all-pro caliber left or right tackle in Penei Sewell. They're going to be comfortable going one-on-one in a lot of these situations. We joked earlier about like, hey, doubling Aaron Donald, and I'm sure they will at times. But there's also going to be times where they're just going to trust Frank to go head up with Aaron Donald. And so if you're expecting to get Jared Goff off schedule, if you're hoping to rattle him, I would hope that this coaching staff being in the Rams would know that like you do that by sending pressure. Not saying I'm like, again, I don't want you to, but if you're going to try to rattle Jared Goff, you're going to have to do it with pressure. The only problem with that though, Morgan, he's been pretty good against pressure.
Yep, and especially if it's not coming like right up the middle in his lap, right?
Yeah.
Because I do think the guys like St. Brown, JMO, Josh Reynolds, they're going to be able to win pretty quickly, like to your point, because the Rams don't have elite personnel on the back end and they play a lot of soft coverage. So it's kind of, you're asking for trouble. And if Laporta's up, like I know Dan put it out there, we'll know more by the middle of the week. But yeah, I do think the Lions receivers, the pass catchers in general, will have opportunities to win quick on the outside. And that's where some of your big plays might get made, right? Is, run after the catch.
Yeah.
And to the Rams' credit, that's where a lot of their big plays happen. When I watch a lot of their tape on offense, their people are blitzing Stafford, and he sees it and he gets it out, and Puka's off and running, Higbee or Cup or whoever. So I hope the Lions can give them a little bit of their own medicine in that regard. Just pick up the blitz when they do decide to send extra bodies and make them pay.
This feels like a game, Morgan, where I see where people say that this could be a shootout. And I definitely, when looking at this defense, as much respect as I have for them, I do see like a defense that the Lions could put up 30 plus points on. At the same time, though, like we've just been talking about, both of these teams are very similar in terms of scheme. I wouldn't be surprised either if this is one of those like tight, low 20s types of games, just because both of these teams run such similar concepts.
Yeah, and it could be a case of two defenses rising to the occasion, like in the Rams and the Lions, because both of them have been, carried more or less by the offense throughout the season. So yeah, that's a really good point. And I'd almost rather it be that way, because I trust the Lions to win a rock fight more than I do the Rams. Just because I do think, man, like I know the Rams have run the ball well as of late, but I hope it doesn't happen against the Lions. Whereas it's the playoffs now, I kind of do anticipate Ben Johnson going to Monty and Ja beforehand and be like, hey, y'all ready to go today? Because we're about to run this thing like 35, 40 times.
And I was going to say, that was the one thing that we didn't talk a ton about in this video, but like, that's where I think the Lions have the biggest advantage, is in being able to get out and hit this Rams defensive line with just so many different run concepts and having two very capable backs. Again, one that went over 1,000 yards rushing, and the other one that has 1,000 yards from scrimmage. The Rams defensive line is in for a long day. So that's how we're feeling about this game. Again, there's a lot of talent. Like we've said, like all season, right? There's talent on these football teams. There's talent on this Rams defense, in the secondary, on the defensive line. Aaron Donald, absolutely circle him, highlight him, do whatever you need to do to make sure that he's not wrecking the game by himself. But Morgan and I are pretty much on the same page here. The Lions offense should have a pretty strong advantage, both passing and running the ball, when it comes, to this Sunday night.
Yep. And respect, like you said, Aaron Donald, first ballot Hall of Famer, second best defensive tackle to ever. I still love Reggie White, man. I'm a 90s baby. All right. So I love Reggie White.
Listen, if you're second to Reggie White,
you're good.
Can't complain.
Yeah.
Can't complain.
You good. Yeah.
But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Let us know in the comment section below. What are you concerned about with this Rams defense? Are you concerned at all? Where do you expect this Lions offense to attack them? Let me know everything that you're thinking in the comment section below. Also, be sure to head over to prideofdetroit.com if you're looking for any more articles or any updates on what is happening with the Detroit Lions in this upcoming week. And last but not least, be sure to stay subscribed, get subscribed, hit that notification bell on this YouTube channel. That way you can be notified anytime we upload new videos or anytime we go live over on the YouTube channel. With all that said, I'm Meko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.